Okay. So we're live. Hello, audience. It said pro tip was to greet viewers. Thank you for joining us today. So let's see. Leah, do you want to stay live on this now, or should I move it to the back? What do I do?
Do with me what you please.
I'll just be there. I like your face.
Thanks.
It's fine. Okay. So my name's Aisha Smith, and I'm with Mission Families. And let's go around and introduce ourselves. Donna, tell us about yourself and what you do and where you're from.
Sure. My name's Donna Lucero. I am from All Faiths Children's Advocacy Center. So I am the clinical director of our high fidelity wraparound program, and I'm also the director of our training institute. So I spend a lot of time going around the community and out of state too, training on trauma, particularly the impact of trauma, childhood trauma, to schools, community members, system partners, you name it. And then I oversee on the clinical side our high fidelity wraparound program and our care coordination program. I've been at All Faiths this time. I just started 15 years, but I worked at All Faiths in the 90s. So All Faiths is home to me for sure.
You do a lot.
It's a lot going on.
Yeah, you do a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We're excited. Rochelle, hello. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Do you want to give us your spiel?
Yeah. So, my name is Rochelle Williams, and I am a Chopra certified meditation, yoga, and Ayurvedic instructor. So, my world is basically health and wellness and prevention, and just how to instill more peace and calm into everyday life using very simple techniques that everyone can do, that can be done in 5 minutes, 2 minutes, or an hour, whatever you have time for. So that's what I really like to teach. And get the word out there, how simple it is and how everyone can do it. So
awesome.
And how important is that these days? I'm trying to fit those moments in more and more. So thank you so much for joining us. Jerry, hello.
It's so nice to meet all of y'all. I'm fairly new to New Mexico, but I've been working with Pegasus Legal Services for a couple of years. I had actually retired from the Southern Poverty Law Center, but I just saw that there was so much work to do that I sat for the New Mexico bar, which was very painful at age 60. And I'm now a lawyer again in New Mexico anyway. And I will tell you that I love Pegasus. I love the work that we do. And I have the privilege of working in our education project, where our elevator speech is, we work to keep children in school and out of jail. And COVID has really been just an explosion, for the families that we work with. It has been a very difficult time, and I will tell you, education is the least of it. So really what we're struggling to do in my little corner of the world is to just serve, which is to be, needs are just incredibly great right now.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Sandra, so everybody should know Sandra's my boss, and she's joining us as the Mission Family. And you look beautiful. You look so fancy. I think I still have on my sweatshirt from
today.
So Sandra, tell us about yourself, and also, so what are we doing here, and what is Mission Families, and why are we working with all these great organizations?
Thank you, Aisha. Yes, I'm Sandra Slavan. I'm excited to be here. I do lead Mission Families for United Way of Central New Mexico. And as many of you know, Mission Families is the family stability component of United Way's Cradle to Career Impact Agenda. So we're about helping families access what they need to create family stability, whatever that looks like. And looks like a lot of things right now, especially in the context of COVID-19. Housed under our umbrella, we have 3 direct services. One is 211, which you probably are aware of, that you can call if you need access to human type resources, social services, that type of thing. We also have the Family Advocacy Center, which is a one central location for victims of interpersonal and domestic violence. And then we have Tax Help New Mexico, which is a service for households that are making $56,000 or less each year. It's free tax prep service. So Mission Families is about making sure families have the resources they need, not just to survive, but to thrive. But we know that everybody needs basic survival needs met before they can move on to thriving. So we're focusing on place-based work in the 4-county area that we serve, which is Bernalillo, Sandoval, Torrance, and Valencia. And we're looking right now into the possibility of collaborating and teaming with other organizations to create resource hubs. We've been doing a lot in the arena of trauma-informed practice training. And it's especially, I mean, it was important before COVID-19, but it's especially important now with what everybody is confronting in terms of all the things that are going on, including lockdowns and being stuck in our homes and you name it. And so we want to help providers and practitioners meet families where they are. And so we've been focusing on making that type of training available for out of school time providers and early child care providers. And then we ultimately really want to engage families as active partners in our work. And so we put together a set of, I'm going to say draft family engagement principles because we view it as a living document. And the core principle is not about us without us. And so our next step on this path is to really actively engage families. And so we're moving toward that with a goal of having a group of families as collaborators with us by next June at the latest. And then the last thing we're doing, well, we're doing a lot of stuff, but last thing I want to mention that we're doing is we have a COVID-19 emergency action group, which is really focused on acute short-term needs of families and children. And so we have a group that's convening almost weekly to talk about needs and make sure they're addressed. And that group is moving toward advocacy in the area of housing stability. So that's what we're doing. And what we're doing here is learning about what's going on right now.
Okay, thank you so much. So I want to address, so this is not our official meeting, so I'm not going to ask any of those questions that have been so vetted. But I do want to talk about something that I think is very important is, so we all work in community, right? Community support, helping people. I think there's a lot of stress and distress in the work that we do. So I wanted to talk about support and wellness for people like us that are trying to support the community also. So, because I know that I have that, I have been at times overwhelmed too. So, Donna, does that resonate with you at all? What toll is the work taking on you as an individual who's also in a pandemic and, unknown personal circumstances?
Yeah, I think it's a big issue. And it's something that we at All Faiths are trying to focus on we are intentionally focusing on the well-being of the staff amidst all of this. It's sort of like, it's funny this conversation comes up because I was training this morning with YDI Early Childhood, both a collaborative of teachers and then a collaborative of their specialists. And this theme was just coming up constantly about them taking care of themselves and what it's like to be a provider, a helper in the midst of all this. And we, really talked about how you can't give what you don't have. So we can't expect the staff to give all that these families need without them being filled up in some way and replenishing them throughout this process, which in a sense, is even more draining than it is when you're in person to work virtually. So
Mm-hmm.
there's just so many factors involved with that, and I think we're really struggling with. We struggle with having to do this in the beginning, and now we've been doing it so long that we're tired. People are tired. And then, we just got word that All Faiths is going to, probably not go back into the office until there is a vaccine, until people are vaccinated.
Wow.
Which could be 12 months or longer, So that news was very heavy for all of the staff to be able to myself included. I literally almost cried, and I'm not a crier. So I was like, oh gosh. I think that's it. And then we're also grateful that we're able to at least work virtually. We're still able to serve families. We have a wait list. We've hired therapists. We've grown our programs. We started a new program. So, things are thriving in a sense, but it's difficult. For sure.
Jerry, what do you think of that? Do you feel it too?
I guess for me personally, well, I live in Santa Fe, so I've always worked remotely to some extent. So I have all the kinks worked out in terms of the home office, but I'm lonely. I miss my colleagues. I have a new client who I've never seen. We've never met, and we're struggling trying to understand the story of her child, what's happened, and just not having that ability to relate in person. But I think we're powering through. We have a vision. We have, we're really buoyed by the mission of our organization. But I think I work in a world where people are already rebellious, and so this is taking on the fight during COVID is what we do.
Sandra, what do you think about that? I know we've talked about it before.
So COVID and working remotely has presented a lot of different challenges. But one of the things that I'm noticing in terms of the context of Mission Families work is that our work is done by volunteers, community partners like you guys. And what's been amazing to me is people's ability to engage with Mission Families, a volunteer activity, even during this intensely busy time. And so while I completely relate to what Jerry says about not being able to connect in person, I miss that a lot. And I'm really, really grateful because I feel like a lot of my professional connections are tighter than they were before COVID. Maybe because on the one hand, it's easier to get to meetings. On the other hand, it's harder not to be in meetings, if that makes sense. Like y'all are probably experiencing the back to back to back to back to back, because there is no, I have to drive there, I have to park my car, and I have to go up the stairs. That's gone. And so there's this level of intensity. So what I'm noticing is for me, I feel a little bit more closely connected, although the connections are happening through a screen. I'm really appreciative of people's level of engagement with Mission Families. I also feel like this pandemic is making it very clear how relevant the work of Mission Families is to bring community partners together to help do what we can collectively to impact family stability. And it is taking a toll because we don't have downtime the way, if we ever did, I don't know, but we certainly don't now. And so that's tougher. And I do worry about, I know New Mexico has a lot of challenges with regards to things like stable internet, not to mention whether people have the income to have access to internet. And so while I feel connected, that's because I am a person with a lot of privilege, and I worry about those that don't have that, and I wonder where they are, and I really hope that they're doing okay.
Yeah. I know we're all worried. Rochelle, you and I have talked a lot about that, and you've been such a support to me, and I read your articles. You're a fantastic writer. How has your personal experience been, and what can you share with us to help to help us maneuver through these times, if anything? You can also just commiserate too.
Yeah, no, I've definitely had this conversation with a lot of my colleagues and friends, and at first, the conversation was, what's going on? How long is this going to last? How am I going to do this? And now I've noticed it's now geared toward, what can I take from this? What's the positive that I could take from this? A lot of it is connection. It's human adaptability. Humans are so adaptable. It's just amazing how they're able to cope through the toughest situations, and the resiliency is pretty powerful, and just reminding people about that, and tapping into their own power, their own strength, even though it's hard, and just seeing where the weaknesses are personally and also, collectively, and how to improve upon that, and just recognizing once and for all just how strong we are as individuals, and then also collectively, and just how important it really is for connection. I live alone, and I talk to Isha all the time about this, how lonely I am. But at the same time, it's forced me to really seek out other ways of being alone, being comfortable with who I am, and what are my values, what are they, and what makes me thrive. Because before I was just kind of coasting along, just kind of taking life as it came to me. And now I've been forced to take this time to really evaluate my life and where I want it to go, and who my friends are, and how to find different ways to connect with other people, and using my own gifts, my own talents, and sharing that with others. And right now it is my background in it's probably been about 15 years now. I've been teaching meditation and healthy Ayurvedic lifestyle and well-being, and a little bit of yoga, not so much, but I can teach it, but not as much. And just sharing that, sharing my gifts with the world. All of us have something we have to share, and then now is the time to do it. This is almost like what I was trained for. Is what it feels like. So those are kind of my thoughts around that.
Thank you. So the work that we do is supportive of the community, and yet we all are part of that in such unique and different ways. So I'm curious, not in how it's changed for us, or how, because that's enormous, right? That could be a whole segment. But what's something unexpected that you have found has happened with your work since we've kind of landed where we are? And I think probably where we are, I know I've talked about it with Sandra before, I don't think anyone could have expected we would be where we are now, right? With this unknown, which is probably, as humans, very hard for us to manage, right? All these unknowns. But what's something unexpected? It doesn't have to be negative or positive, just whatever comes to your mind about where you are right now. Because I was thinking what Rochelle said about really having to face who she is and her values. And I thought that resonated with me, because you have to be with yourself a lot, even though I have more distractions because I have small ones. But Donna, do you have any thoughts?
Sure. Two things came to mind that were sort of unexpected. When we originally switched to just going virtual with everything, well, there's multiple, but I'll just start with those two. I was very skeptical about doing training virtually. In fact, it wasn't even skeptical. I was like, I don't want to do it. I had a really hard time with that. But there was not going to be a choice. So went in full force trying to figure out how to do it and how to make it work the best way possible. And I think the surprising thing that I've learned throughout this process is that it can work. It's not ideal. I'd rather be in person, but it can work. And what I can do now is reach way more people than I could reach before. So I've been able to, the reach has been so much further. And so many people who couldn't go to a training before, couldn't participate before, or, whatever reason got in the way, now are able to participate. We see babies, on the screen while people are in training, and we see, all these things going on, but people are engaged and invested. And I think that's the second thing is that I've noticed that I've been pleasantly surprised is that although it's always better in person, we can connect virtually. We can really feel each other's connection, and you can get a vibe still. It's not exactly the same, but you can still get a pulse on how other people are feeling and what the experience is. And I think people connect. It is possible to connect on an emotional, more intimate level virtually through a screen that I ever thought remotely possible. So, I mean, that has been, not that it's going to minimize or diminish being in person, because that's not going to change. That's always the best. But what I now know is that we can reach many more people, be it training or maybe therapy with remote areas of New Mexico, which I was like, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. But now we can reach many more people that may not have had access to services before. We can, address the internet issues and things like that, but provide much more opportunity to connect. And you can do it not in a way that replaces being in a person, but, a pretty close second, or much closer than I thought it would be when we originally started this. So that's been a pleasant surprise. And just the level of gratitude that we at least have this. We at least have a virtual format, which, 20 years ago, wouldn't have been able to do this. Like, then we would have had telephone, and that's even further removed. So I find myself between this struggle between gratitude and, frustration. Gratitude, I don't want to do this. Gratitude, right? So it's this mix around all of it, but I have been pleasantly surprised.
Thank you for sharing. Sandra,
Sure.
Sandra, so speaking of babies, I was thinking of babies and pets, which are like the highlight of my own life.
Everything
So, Sandra,
stops if you see a baby or a puppy.
I know, Sandra, tell us about Milo. You adopted him, right? During
Yes, he's a COVID baby. I got him from the city on August 1st. And it was really funny. I didn't know what I waited until you didn't have to make appointments. So I ended up going to a PetSmart location where they had city adoptions. And I went in, and he had a cone on him, and I wouldn't have even thought to look at him. I went to see this other dog, and the volunteer said, hey, the other dog and I didn't work. And so she said, you might want to check this guy out. And I'm like, really? He's all stacked out with this cone. And so he comes out, and he's like bumping into everything. And he was just like the sweetest, kindest dog, and the rest is history. And I need to get him a service dog license or something so I can bring him to work, because I just love hanging out with him. He's a good supporter. He's learning now. He's got a lot of puppy in him. He's a little bit less than 2, younger than 2, I guess. But the funny thing is, he now is adapting to my work schedule. So like usually doesn't appear when we're doing this sort of thing. But then when these are over, he always comes and checks on me, which is pretty awesome. So going back to what Donna was saying about the different outcomes that might be unexpected, like one of the unexpected huge gifts is sort of bringing real into the room of our professional context. And I love it, because it seems like dovetailing on what Rachel said, or Raquel, I'm not saying your name right. Rochelle. It's Raquel, right? Rochelle. I feel like I live by myself, except that now I have Milo. But my life has gotten stripped down to what I feel is necessary. And what I feel is necessary is authenticity. And so I feel like sort of the engagements that I do have with folks are very authentic, because I don't know, and so I appreciate that. I think that's a gift of this COVID scenario. So if my dog, jumps up on me in the middle of a meeting, that's what happens, or if somebody has a baby or a child or whatever, or a husband walks by or a partner walks by. I love that. And so I appreciate the real in the Zoom room. And I love having my dog.
Thank you for sharing Milo with us. He makes me happy.
Right.
Jerry, what has been unexpected for you in anything else you've thought about?
Well, first I have to tell you that my dog this morning at about 8:15 started heading toward my office and looking at me like I was late. Okay, because she's so used to like the we're in this together thing in the home office. But but I think, in terms of my expectations, it's more personal than professional, although it bleeds over. I did not expect this to go on as long as it has. And I remember that I had a hearing scheduled for March 16th, D-Day, when the governor closed the schools. And I remember telling my client, it's okay, we'll be back on in a couple of weeks. It's all right. And then, April came and March and June and July, and here it is November. And really trying to calibrate my personal expectations with our reality. And so I guess, while I'm just sort of trying to pace myself now when I don't think I was at the beginning. And I think that's more personal, but that's really what I've been learning lately.
Oh, that's thoughtful. Thank you. Rochelle, what about you? Do you have any additional thoughts, even though we kind of started off with you would led us in this direction? Anything unexpected?
No, I think just kind of what was already stated is I was very doubtful because I help out with a lot of online.
Yes.
Can you still see me?
That's because Leah is highlighting you as a spotlight guest.
Oh, okay. I just see myself now. Yeah, I help out with online teacher trainings. They've been shifted to online now, and I was very doubtful that I could make the connections, the deep connections, as you would in person, and was pleasantly surprised that you could still. I think it's an energy thing where you can still feel the people. Even though they're from all over the world, you can still feel their presence online and still connect with them on a very deep level. I mean, it doesn't take the place of in person, of course, but just it was very neat to experience that. And now we have group meditations every month that we do, and I feel that connection every single time. So that was pretty cool to experience, and also. The reconnecting with people, finding out who my real friends are. Just kidding. But just reconnecting with people and even family because because there's no one else. You kind of have to reconnect with friends and family again in different ways, and that was pretty neat to do and discover, and I appreciate that very much. So, yeah.
It reminds me, there's a saying, I can't give it credit because I don't remember, and I'm probably paraphrasing and I don't remember where it came from, but adversity doesn't change character, it reveals character. And I think that's been something I have, has resonated with me over the past forever year, the 2020 that feels like it will never end. I'm interested too, if you can share a little more in depth, because we did like a cursory of introduction, but I've been on calls with all of you and your organizations and just been astounded at the level of work you do and some of the examples. So I'm going to ask you just to expound on your work just a little bit. You can choose what you want to talk about, but Jerry, will you talk about some of what I've been on some of your webinars, and it's tough, but what does Pegasus focus on, and what kind of resources do you offer for the community? Because I know it's a lot.
So Pegasus writ large, beyond my little corner of the Pegasus world, our goal is really to create a better world for children and youth in New Mexico. And we look at, ways to support children in independent decision making, to ensure stability and non-discrimination in their worlds. And what I do in our education program, as I mentioned, again, it's our elevator speech, but it sums it up. Our goal is to keep children in school and out of jail. And we identify where we lose children. We lose them because schools are low quality. We lose children because they are disciplined inappropriately. They're thrown out, both children with disabilities, children without disabilities. They are thrown out of school forever, for things that really should just net them a visit to the principal's office. And in extreme cases, school misconduct is criminalized so that they do find themselves in jails, in prison, in the criminal justice system. So we're trying to, in our education program, we're trying to interrupt that everywhere we can. And, at the heart of a lot of this is just garden variety discrimination. We have youngsters of color who, I talked to a parent recently, and, her child, said things that are not objectively offensive or disruptive, but there's a cultural disconnect. So when you've got a young male of color who says yo to the teacher construes that as disrespect, and the kid ends up being disciplined, possibly expelled. And then there are criminal charges brought against these youngsters for disruption of the educational process in the most cases. And so, that is what we are trying to do, is to prevent that from occurring for these kids. And it is happening to the most vulnerable. It's happening to children of color. It's happening to children with disabilities. It's happening to youngsters who are learning to understand their sexual identity. They're all, in this risk category. So that's, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do at Pegasus.
Thank you on behalf of all the children and youth. Donna, I know I've had just the privilege of working with all faiths in so many different facets in my nonprofit work, but it has been lovely to get to know you since I started at United Way. Tell us a little bit more about whatever you want to share about the work that you're doing.
Sure, thank you. So just to kind of dovetail on Jerry there, I think we are working with the kids that Jerry's talking about. All Faiths has been in the community for 65 years next year. So we've been in the community for a super long time. All of those years have been spent focusing on kids and families who've experienced trauma, and all kinds of trauma. I'm not only talking about physical abuse or sexual abuse, but a broad definition of trauma. 65 years of that, I have spent the last 15, at All Faiths doing this work. And we are working with the kids and the families that Jerry's talking about. What we see is, the kids that we serve, and a large portion of kids in our community have experienced trauma, a broad definition of trauma. And what we know about trauma and the trauma response is that it impacts functioning, it impacts behavior, it impacts school success. So as Jerry was speaking, all of that was resonating with me, because we see kids who so many times are dealing with this trauma response, and what are sort of traditional old school, I get in trouble for saying that word all the time, but like traditional old school education and reward consequence system punishes kids for a trauma response. And, the reality is you can't punish trauma out of kids. It doesn't work. So we've got to look at it differently. And that's our goal at All Faiths, is to really look differently at and actually see the kids and the families that we're working with, see underneath the behavior, start to get the root of what's going on and how we can help them manage and maneuver this trauma response that oftentimes, gets them into trouble at school. But we are, and I spend a lot of time in the community training educators, particularly around this, is seeing with a trauma sensitive lens, looking underneath behavior. And if we do that, we are going to then respond to that behavior differently. So we're not throwing the kids out of school who are dysregulated, or we're not throwing kids out of school who are checked out and disengaged. We're not throwing kids out of school who are having these experiences, and instead we're working to get at the root. So All Faiths does that in all sorts of ways. We have therapy, we have community-based services, we have high fidelity wraparound, we have our forensic services, which work closely with law enforcement and children, youth, and families when kids initially disclose abuse. We have care coordination, so we're working on just accessibility and just access to resources. We have the Training Institute, which I mentioned before, which is just focused on education in our community about trauma and the trauma response. So I'm super proud of All Faiths, and I think we are, working relentlessly to try and change some of the things that even Jerry was speaking about before with the kids that she's dealing with at Pegasus. And love Pegasus, by the way. So yeah, that's us.
Thank you. I think, Sandra, this has probably resonated with you a bit, because I know this is a lot of the work that we're doing. Do you want to talk about Mission Families and how you see this tying in?
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm going to go back in time a bit, because before I came to United Way, I was working for Albuquerque Public Schools, and I was an administrator. And prior to that, I was a poverty awareness trainer for the district's Title I department. And one of the messages from that training was, if you are judging, you cannot help. If you're judging, you cannot connect. And going back to what Donna was saying, like if we interact with people without understanding that they may be experiencing a traumatic response or response to trauma, we're not going to be able to connect. And we just really need to meet people where they are and take down the barrier, the judgment barrier. And I think that's what Mission Families is about. It's about how could we support you, not why are you where you are. And so it's about meeting people where they are, finding out about what their hopes, dreams, and aspirations are, and figuring out if there's a role for us to support in that. And right now, with the immediacy of COVID, we're doing all sorts of stuff that whatever we can to support families and children wherever they are. So whether that's providing snacks, water to medically fragile families housed in hotels, otherwise homeless, or providing child-sized masks through donations to middle schools, to partnering with the ABC Community School Partnership. There's so much insecurity in terms of food and housing right now that that's really been a focal point. And one of the things that we're working toward is really advocating for housing stability. And I know it's a very complex issue, but right now I am so appreciative that in addition to the CDC moratorium on physical evictions for non-payment of rent, we also have our New Mexico Supreme Court's moratorium on physical eviction for non-payment of rent. Because, gosh, when people are no longer housed, it just brings up a whole host of other trauma and issues like public health concerns and so on. And so whatever we can do to keep people in place during this extremely difficult time, I'm going to advocate for that. So just a few thoughts. The other thought that is really important is I don't think any one organization can do this on their own. And so I think it's really, really important for all of us to coalesce to have a collective impact. And that's why I'm so grateful to be a part of United Way, because we have so many amazing partnerships, and they really are helping us to have a greater impact, more of a collective impact.
Thank you. Tracy, I'm so glad you were able to join us a little bit. So
I just got home and I thought, I'm going to see if you're still here.
we are.
Hi there.
So we're just chatting. Do you want to introduce yourself and just let everyone that's here and also that's watching us where you work and what you do? And
Sure. I'm Tracy Weaver, and I am the executive director at Serenum, where we provide up to 2 years of housing for families experiencing homelessness so they can work on increasing their life skills and their education vocational training so they can be stable after they leave our program.
Thank you. And I think we've all enjoyed working with you too. So I can't remember what question we were on, but what were we talking about? I got lost after I saw so Sandra, you were talking about what we were doing with Mission Families Connection. And so we also have Pegasus and All Faiths, and Rochelle is from the Chopra Center. So thank you for coming. Tracy, what is something, so I had the chance to see, I felt a solidarity with you watching children and sharing Wi-Fi, a lot of kids on online school. What's something unexpected that you have found in the world that we find ourselves in? And it doesn't have to be positive or negative, but just something that maybe you didn't expect in this world.
Oh, wow. You have really thoughtful questions. Okay. You know, for my family, who I'm sitting here having school with every day, as well as the families at Serenum, I mean, how much that we are relying on technology has been just shocking. I mean, we have technology, we use it all the time, but now we need it not only to connect to work and to do our jobs and our schools, but this is how we are socializing. This is how we are getting to see our family. This is how we are getting our kind of social needs met. And this, for Serenum, this is how we're building community. And that's really new for many of us, that this is the way that we're connecting with other people. I know for my kids, this is how they're staying in touch with their friends. And that's really different than being able to see people every day. So I think that's something that's kind of been surprising, both in a positive way that we have access to technology that can make us stay connected like this, but really also in the way that there's still a screen in front of me in order for me to see other people.
Thank you. Rochelle, since you are our expert on mindfulness and well-being, which I think is, I can't even say the level of importance that I think it should be. I think, and it's come up, I think, Jerry, you said it too, that like the focus is on education and attendance, and there's this mental health crisis, I feel like, that is just looming, especially with the youth. So Rochelle, what are some things that children and youth and adults, what are just a few things that you would recommend for just some peace of mind, even for a few moments, maybe?
I would say, well, the most of the work I do is with adults. But just what I've noticed just in working with my own little nieces and nephews is a lot of mirroring. And people always tell me this, and I took it to heart, is me just coming into a room, being calm and cool and collected. That's just naturally kind of how I am, made them feel calm and peaceful. And at first, when I was younger, I thought, well, that's kind of lame. I want to be exciting and inspire people. But then as I got older and have learned the things that I've learned, I realized it's actually kind of a superpower that I have now. And it does help that, I do my meditations, I do my workouts, I do everything, my self-care that I do. And by doing that, my cousins see me doing that, and they will emulate it. Or they'll ask me questions, or they'll see just my own demeanor, how I handle certain situations as a result of what I've learned, the techniques I've learned. So that's always been really important that I share with people. And what was your question again?
I'm on mute. Wherever you're going is fine. I think I was just trying to, the general direction, the last question I wanted to wrap up with, because I only have 7 more minutes with you, is if someone, to the people that are watching right now, or the people that will watch in the future, what is something you would want to share with them to get through these times? And it doesn't have to be youth and children. I think all of us could benefit from some comfort and encouragement right now. So that was going to be my final ask. So you were my first.
To breathe. Breath is one of the most powerful tools that we have that we do not utilize. And that's one of my favorite things to teach people because it's immediate. And if you practice it every day, even if it's just 5 minutes in the morning, and that's all you do, more is better, of course. But if you just started with 5 minutes a day, it will change your life. Breath has a direct connection to our vagus nerve, which affects our nervous system. And just by modulating your breath, you can immediately create calm in your mind, body, and spirit. So that would be one thing. If someone came in brand new and said, I need help, I would say, well, let me teach you some breathing techniques. And that's what I would say to them. So even just breathing in, and a quick one would be, breathing in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, 4, 4, 4.
4, 4, 4. Okay. Thank you. Sandra, what would you share with our audience? Some words of encouragement or something that helps you?
I would say exercise self-compassion, which is tough for a lot of us to do. And now's a really good time to practice or to try it out because it is a difficult time. And things are not the way that they may have been. They're not the way we expect them to be. And I think if we're compassionate with ourselves, it makes it, I know in my case, when I'm compassionate with myself, it makes it easier for me to go with the flow. I know things won't probably work out the way I had hoped, and it's okay. It is okay. And make sure that you acknowledge all the awesome things that you're doing each and every day. And remember, even one little thing can make a gigantic difference. Like if somebody can see, I forgot what it's called, smiling eyes, I think is a smize. But if you're in the grocery store and somebody can see you smize, you might make a difference that you will never know about. It's that human connection. So take time to connect in whatever ways you can and be compassionate with yourself because you're doing the best you can.
That's good advice. Tracy, what would you share? If anything, you don't have to.
I think that too, that this has been a year to really be focused on being grateful for what we have instead of what we don't, because we're so confined and not doing the normal things that, the best we can do, we're doing it. And just to keep that up front, that, we are all making it through this really difficult, challenging time. And if we can take care of ourselves, then maybe we can also then make a difference out in the community.
Yes. Donna, what are your wise words?
Thanks. Well, it's interesting. As I mentioned before, I was training all morning with YDI, and I came up with actually a kind of a mantra that really stuck. I and another person, Peggy Tafoya, I told her I'd give her credit for it because I was going to use it. So our new mantra is be safe, be kind, and hang on. Be safe, be kind, and hang on. So be safe in terms of taking care of yourself and others. Let's keep ourselves and each other safe. Be kind to ourselves and be kind to others. And then hang on, because this will pass. We will make it through this and come to the other side. So it's really about be safe, be kind, and hang on. So that's our new mantra. And as of today, this just creative juices were flowing this morning, and we came up with that one.
That's a good one. I think it also emphasizes that this is not permanent in all aspects, right? We just have to get through it.
Right.
Jerry?
Absolutely.
Okay, so remember, I'm a lawyer and I'm a litigator, so take it with a grain of salt. But for me, maintaining structure and a schedule has really helped me to be safe, be kind, and hang on. Thank you so much for that, Donna. That I'm going to incorporate your mantra as well.
It's a good one. Well,
Yes,
we're
use
ending up. Yes. Does anyone have any final thoughts they want to share? We so appreciate you. I will say that Sandra at our team meeting this morning asked what we were grateful for. And I said, people, the people in my life, both professionally and personally, because I am so lucky to have be surrounded by incredible people, and hope feels like a dangerous thing right now because it's just so much uncertainty. But when I hear and get to work with you, I have hope because we have some very incredible people supporting our community that needs it so much. So thank you so much. And for a test run, this was really quite awesome, I have to tell you. So thank you so much. So Sandra, do you have anything to say to wrap up?
I just wanted to say thank you all so much for the work that you're doing for our communities. It's hugely, hugely important. And I appreciate you, and I know everyone else does, whether or not they tell you. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
And we will see these lovely ladies again. So Wednesday we'll be live at 12 noon with a very formalized agenda. No, I'm just kidding. So it's a conversational chat. And thank you so much for your time. And it was wonderful seeing all of you. And I look forward to Wednesday. And I'm so grateful for each of you. So thank you.
Sounds good. See you Wednesday. Should we log on a little bit earlier or?
Based on today, I would say probably yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe 10 till or something like that?
10 or 5, yeah. So we can figure it out. Yep. And I'll send a little email too. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you
everyone.
soon.
See you soon.